What's going on, guys? This is Kaishiro. Welcome back. So we are back with another video. On this video, we're going to cover the OCG Metagame tier list post April 2024 OCG limited regulation ban list. So we did have a new ban list recently. Just last night, March 24, Sunday evening, we have concluded new ban list for us. And this tier list is a good parameter for us to identify which decks can be promising on the new format and which decks can edge out the format. So as usual, this tier list was posted by ESDR's Facebook page and was made by Rai_10Y or Raito on his X or Twitter account. So we have S, A, B, C, and D tiers here. So as usual, we are going to start on D tier. On the first deck on the D block, we have Salamangreat. So Salamangreat has been a very prominent deck on the C and D tier for quite some time now already. There's a lot of representations of Salamangreat recently, and I think Salamangreat will be fine because they have only lost the one copy of Kaiser Colosseum, which they prominently use on the main deck to stun the opponent and win the game from there. And they still have Promethean, and also Raging Phoenix is still very phenomenal for Salamangreat. So the only problem of Salamangreat is of course, the usual Maxi. They do struggle around Maxi very much, and I think Salamangreat will be fine in a position to compete against the next format. Moving on next, on the D tier, we have Ritual Beast, so the Spiritual Beast. So this deck was popularized by the support from Terminal World that they have gotten some time ago. So I think Ritual Beast is a deck that can be very adaptive on the format, can shut down the graveyard using the cards like the Fissure and Shifter. Of course, they can utilize those cards, so they can pretty much hurt all of the top tier meta decks here. We have the Fire Kings and the Snake Eyes and even the Yubel and Adamant Spator. They all struggle around the Shifter and the Fissure. So I think Ritual Beast can be a very good anti-meta option to eradicate the best decks available. Even though this deck is not anti-meta on that extent, it is still a good countermeasure to answer the best decks available on the following format. Next, we have Melodious, So Melodious has been a very powerful deck as well for the past 2 months already. And I think Melodious will continue to perform because the Banish didn't do anything aside from the extravagance hit on their consistency. But other than that, this is still a very consistent deck. It can set up multiple interruptions and as a very solid going first as well. So I expect that Melodious can continue to perform on the following format, and I think the introduction of the Finsmith will definitely give the format a huge array of varieties. But for now, I think this list is very much solid for our new format. Next, we have Fluandris on the D tier, the last deck on the D tier. So Fluandris has been around since Birth of Destiny, So it's been 2-3 years already. It's 2021 that Fluandris have released on our OCG, and they are still a very good deck to play on this current age of 2024. So I expect nothing less by Fluandris because this deck nullifies the Maxi. The moment that you eradicate the 3 of the most prominent cards on the deck of many people, such as Maxi, you are guaranteed to have a very nice spot on the format. And also, Fluandris walks around the Promethean Princess on the graveyard because the Fluandris only normal summons most of the time, 99% of the time. So they don't trigger the Promethean, the Togahime. And also, Fluandris are a very good deck to stun the opponent when going first. Of course, Empen is a big boss penguin that can boss the game. And the problem of Fluandris are of course, hand traps, Veiler, Imperms, Ash, all of those relevant hand traps that can hurt the playthrough of Fluandris. Next, on the C tier, we have Pen Magi. So, Pendulum Magician, or the Supreme King, Pendulum Zerk Magician. I wonder how this deck unfolds on the following days or weeks because this deck doesn't really see much top cut representations on the large scale tournaments on China and Korea and Japan. And I think this is still a very solid deck. The only problem is they pretty much struggle on the cards that really hurts them, like Maxi of course and Droll sometimes. And yeah, the popularity of Droplet from the Tenpai and Snake Eyes are a threat for them. And I think anti-spell as well is a very concerning problem for the deck. The moment that anti-spell is flipped against them, they're really in a bad position to play the game. So yeah, I think even though the deck is powerful, it have a lot of combos and playthrough to go first and dominate the game. They still have a lot of weaknesses on the format. Next we have Labyrinth, no? So Labyrinth will be always be there, to be honest. I cannot suppress my feeling around Labyrinth because they are almost relevant all of the time. The only problem that they have encountered the last format is their match-up spread against the best decks, against the Tenpai, against the Snake Eyes, the Fire King. They tend to struggle very much so against those decks. But all in all, Labyrinth is still a deck that should be respected. They can turbo out trap cards, Dimensional Barrier, Rumple Twofold, or the Black Coat Laps. So they have a lot of toolbox on the trap card lineup on their deck, and they can also play plethora of hand traps on the deck to slow down the opponent. And yeah, when you cannot ash the big welcome and the welcome Labyrinth, it becomes a problem as well. So I think this will be a very solid position for Labyrinth on the C tier, and we could definitely expect great things for Labyrinth, especially if they can find the correct traps to play on the format to eradicate the best decks. Next, we have Emancipator. So, this deck is very popular on countries like China and Taiwan. And I think Emancipator is not respected enough by our OCG community as a whole, because this deck really snowballs out of control when they go first and you don't have Maxi or anything like Nibiru or any cards that can stop them from playing the game. They will steamroll you over and over again. This deck has a very powerful going first. It can be also resilient. They can play around Imperms, Veilers, and Ogres, and other Ghost Bells. Those untraps are pretty much weak around Emancipator, and this deck really snowballs out of control. And the unpredictability of this deck is unmatched as well. They can play 60 cards, 50, 40, depending on the pilot, whether they maximize their Earth cards or other engines on the deck. So I think this will be a very interesting deck, no, to look upon whether they will continue to perform or not. But for now, I think safe on C tier is what they currently at right now. Next, we have Fire King, the pure mono Fire King version of the deck. So they recently have a card that supported the deck. I forgot the name of this Fire Lady Chicken, but yeah, I forgot the name. So this deck is very much different, no, from the usual Fire King, Snake Eyes, Sinful Spoils. This is a more controlled version of the deck that aims to grind out games and also to overwhelm the opponent by out-resourcing them on the long process. So I think this deck is really respectable enough. They have only lost one Kirin and also one Kaiser Colosseum, but they can still floodgate the opponent like Skill Drain and other cards like Goes in Match, and also Rivalry of Warlords can be very tactful on this deck. And also the deck can play a lot of hand traps because they have a lot of space on the main deck, and also they still have access to Promethean and Blue Whale. So this deck is still powerful, and I kinda expect that this deck would go up on the following weeks if people can find the correct build for this deck, because there's a lot of varieties now on this deck, and the deck is not streamlined into one type of build. So players will still innovate and adapt on this deck moving forward. Next, we have B tier. We have Chimera, no? So on B tier, I really don't agree that Chimera is B tier because I have experienced myself firsthand how powerful this deck is. I have faced top Chimera pilots on the Philippines. We have Sean Quijano and Chito Racimo and other Chimera top players like An. And yeah, there's a lot of phenomenal players of Chimera in our country, and the deck is really solid enough to compete on the A tier on my own perspective, But for some reason, Chimera is not that really popular on Japan. That's why I understand why Chimera is on B tier only on this list. But nonetheless, this deck is still phenomenal. I think the deck really offers a lot of dimensions for the player. You can have grindy games using Chimera. You can overwhelm the opponent going first with this Chimera setup with the Illusionist cards and Horus sometimes. And also Chimera have a very phenomenal going second. They have Fright for Patchwork and Chimera Fusion and Poly, of course. There's a lot of cards that can comfortably do the job for them when going second. Next we have on the B tier we have Melodious Supreme King, I assume. So they now have the third copy of Dark Worm and Melodious as well. Still very strong deck and a very tough contender on the format right now. But I don't really see that this deck is worth on B tier. Maybe they are telegraphing that this deck will be B tier because of the third copy of Dark Worm. The Supreme King will be more powerful, but I don't really see that, to be honest. And I think Melodious Mono or the pure Melodious version is much more better than this deck. But the upside on this deck is this is more explosive, this has more ceiling and more skill expression as well. So I think this deck is a very strong deck to play, but I don't really see this on B tier. Next we have Yubel, no? So Yubel will be very powerful post Info or Infinite Forbidden once they have gotten the new Fiendsmith and the other cards that supports the Fiend archetype. It will be very bombastic and really strong. And I'm really afraid for other decks, to be honest, for Yubel or the Fiend Link deck to be able to conquer the format because Fiendsmith is really spicy, to be honest, and I think the Fiendsmith really adds a lot of ceiling for the Yubel, and I think Yubel will eventually get the spotlight that they deserve for quite some time now because they have been overlooked by some people, and many people are not respecting Yubel enough. But this is like a more defensive Unchained. It is more tough to break the board of Yubel, and also Yubel has a decent going second. They can have the access to the extra deck of Unchained, and also the link climbing potential of this deck is also phenomenal. And yeah, the Fiendsmith really adds another dimension for the deck to be able to be more powerful than ever. So I think Yubel will be a very tough deck to contend at on B tier, and potentially will go higher on this tier list post Info. Next we have Snake Eyes Sinful Spoils. So they have lost 2 copies of Wanted and 1 copy of Ash. But luckily, Bonfire is not hit for them, so they still have a lot of starters on the deck. They have 2 Ash, and they can bump the copies of the original and the Witch, the Diablo Star Witch, so that they can compromise for the consistency that they have lost on the ban list. But yeah, I think this deck is still solid, no? On Master Duel, they don't even have Bonfire, no? But they're still really dominating the format. And I think this deck is still really respectable on B tier. And even though I think Yubel will be more better on the post Info, I think Snake Eyes is still will be still around here on the format until the other fire cards or the Fire Nation cards will be power creep or getting hit on the next ban list on the June. So I think this deck is kinda, what do you call this, really tentative, no? I think if people can suppress the build of Snake Eyes and adapt cards to improve the consistency, moreover, and I think this deck will stay on B tier. But if people cannot find the correct solution for this deck, I think it will eventually go lower on this tier, like the Purely and other decks here like Rescue Ace that have fallen off recently. Next we have on the A tier we have Tenpai. So Tenpai, goodness gracious, this deck is really hot right now on the OCG format. The Tenpai deck also won the recent Battle Nexus tournament in the Philippines, which is won by Jude Macaranas or Davis Kershwell. So Tenpai is really strong when you consider the fact that this is the only deck that can go second comfortably and win games from massive damage output, board breaking capability, and also a plethora of hand traps to support their assets. So I think Tenpai is much more higher than Rescue here, and even Runic. I really think that Tenpai is the second best deck on the format right now, and I don't see Rescue Ace or Runic higher than them. But yeah, this is the Japanese tier list, so I cannot really say that much around their metagame. But yeah, Tenpai is very strong. The deck can deal and dish massive amount of damages, and also has a very solid going second text. They can mix and match hand traps on the deck like Mourner, Bell, Ogre to cater their deck around their metagame or the environment that they're playing. Also, they can switch their build on going second cards like Lightning Storm, Change of Heart, and other cards like Regeki to bolster their going second potential as a deck. And also, the going first of this deck is a concern, but they have cards like Kaiser Colosseum and the Black Goat and also the Barrier to supplement their weak going first when going first. And next we have Fire King, Sinful Spoil, Snake Eyes. So this deck is the cause or the aftermath of the ban list. The ban list really touched the Fire King, of course, because Fire King has been dominant for quite some time already, no? It's been last year that Fire King has been really at the top and the apex predator of the format. But now, they are toned down. They have lost copies of Kirin. They have lost copies of Ash and Wanted. But I still think that they can pretty much compete at the top because for the fact that the deck has so much gas to play. They have a lot of recursion, recovery, and overall ceiling to play the game at the top level. And yeah, I think Snake Eyes and Sinful Spoils really complements the Fire King a lot as a deck and archetype. So yeah, moving on the 8 tier, we have Runic. So Runic will always be here no matter what happens, even though the world will end in a couple of days or what. Runic will still be here because they are not really getting the correct hit on the ban list. Konami don't know what they are doing on Runic. They have limited there can be only 1 into 1 to address the Runic floodgate shenanigans, but I think it's not enough, to be honest. I don't really see there can be only 1 into 1 hurting the Runic that much. They can still play Synchro Zone, and there's a lot of other floodgates that they can play like Fissure to stun the opponent, and the deck is very much cancerous. I hate playing against the deck, and even though I'm playing Runic as well on some occasions, I think the deck is very unhealthy for the game, and I think Konami should definitely address Runic for once and for all. Maybe they will ban the Card of Demise like the Master Duel have done, and they can hit the Runic tip going into 1 to trim down the consistency of the Runic. But for now, yeah, Konami doesn't know what to do against Runic, and Runic will continue to be there. And I think this is your safest bet to play on the format when you don't know what deck to pick and you don't really feel like playing Voiceless and Tenpai and the upcoming Finsmith. I think Runic will be a safe option for you just to have a comfort deck to play on the format. Next we have on the 8 tier, we have the last deck on the 8 tier, we have Rescue A, Sinful Spoil, Snake Eyes. I'm not really a fan of this deck, but I think this deck is still quite respectable, no? We have Kenneth Febra on the Philippines that have piloted this Rescue Ace on the recent Battle Nexus, and he finished top 16 or above top 16, I assume. So the deck is still powerful enough to compete against the top, and I think they have lost consistency for the loss of Wanted. But yeah, Rescue Ace can still do its job. The Turbulence Pass is still very powerful, and also the Snake Eyes can give them access to the Promethean and the Ambler Whale. So I think this deck can still perform, but it depends whether players will pick up the deck or play the deck at all, because I think that players will tether towards more Tenpai and Voiceless Voice moving forward. Next, on the 8 tier, I'm really lost out of breath and now finally, we have the S tier, we have Voiceless Voice, my own deck, and I think this deck will be at the top for quite some time, along with Tenpai on my own preference. But yeah, Voiceless Voice can pretty much play around Maxi, that's their biggest asset. They can play around Maxi effectively using the Blessing, of course, and also Voiceless Voice doesn't really struggle that much around Maxi. Your opponent doesn't draw that much when you play the Voiceless Voice. They can only draw 1 or 2 or 3 sometimes. So you nullify the biggest threat on the OCG format, and also you have a 4-1 beat stick with Omni Negate and protection from targeting effects. I think it is pretty much solid to say at the least that this deck is quite at the top right now, and other decks doesn't really come close to the consistency of the Voiceless Voice right now. Even though the deck has really weird hands or bricky plays, I think Tenpai is up in the par of the consistency level on the best decks available. But yeah, Voiceless Voice does have a lot of resiliency as a deck, and also the Omni Negate is really important right now because the format is really diverse, and having Omni Negate ensures you a way to negate the best play of your opponent and hold your negate for the best available time to use it. And also the Sauravis can pretty much be phenomenal as well to nullify the special summoning conditions and variations of the format right now. And yeah, I think even though Voiceless Voice is really in a top position right now, I think Finsmith will overthrow them moving forward because we are nearing to the Info or the Infinite Forbidden, and I think it will definitely hurt the Voiceless Voice, and other decks like Yubel and even Snake Eyes will benefit from Finsmith over Voiceless Voice. So yeah, that sums up our OCG Metagame tier list for April 2024 OCG format. So once again, thank you for watching, and please like this video and hit the subscription button to subscribe on my YouTube channel. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.